Hello and welcome to this second first look exploring session looking at Hymen's Triumph by Samuel Daniel, a pastoral tragi-comedy presented at the Queen's Court in the Strand during our wedding celebration and general opening of the building as well, saying, "Isn't this building lovely? Let's have a play." We've been enjoying it so far, the first two acts. It's lots of love, there's lots of intrigue, there's lots of really dynamic characters doing interesting dynamic things. It's keeping its dramaturgy relatively simple and compact, so there's only ever a few people on stage at any one time, but it's working around that really well so far. So I have hopeful things as the tragedy element builds up and then is replaced hopefully with a suitable bait and switch of comedy, that this will ramp up the tension and excitement as we go into the final moments. So reading today, Charinus and Montanus is...
Hi, I'm Greg. This time I get to be the father. Oh dear.
Reading Cloris, Chorus and Question is...
Cloris, Chorus and Question. It's Tom from Brighton.
Reading Medorus, Clarindo and Lidia is...
Lynsey Beauchamp, actor in Kirkcaldy, Scotland.
And reading Palaemon and Phillis today is...
Liza Graham, actor and singer in London.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will also be reading Thyrsis today, unless I can palm it on to somebody else later on, which I'll now be looking at the paperwork to see if I can do that. But without further ado, we're going to dive into Act 3, Scene 1, and we have the arrival of Charinus, who we've not met before, the father of Thyrsis, and chatting to Palaemon, who's the mate of Thyrsis, who's spent most of the first act telling Thyrsis to get over himself. He's fine. It doesn't matter if his love is dead.
Palaemon, you methinks might something work with Thyrsis, my aggrieved son, and sound his humour what it is, and why he thus afflicts himself in solitariness. You two were wont to be most inward friends, and glad I was to see it, knowing you to be a man well-tempered, fit to sort with his raw youth. Can you do nothing now to win him from this vile captivity of passion that withholds him from this world?
In troth, Charinus, I have oftentimes, as one that suffered for his grievances, essayed to find a way into the cause of his so strange dismay, and by all means advised him make redemption of himself, and come to life again, and be a man with men. But all serves not. I find him locked fast to his will, allege I what I can.
But will he not impart to you the cause?
The cause is love, but it is such a love as is not to be had.
Not to be had? Palaemon, if his love be regular as there in all Arcadia any she whom his ability, his shape, and worth may not attain, he being my only son.
She is not in Arcadia whom he loves, nor in the world, and yet he dearly loves.
And may that be, Palaemon? Tell me plain.
Thus plainly he's in love with a dead woman, and that so far as with the thought of her which hath shut out all other, he alone lives and abhors to be or seen or known.
What was this creature could possess him so?
Fair Sylvia, old Medorus' daughter, who was 2 years past reported to be slain by savage beasts upon our country shore.
Is that his grief? Unless I rather thought it appertained unto another's part to wail her death. Lexi should do that to whom her father had disposed her, and she esteemed only to be his. Why should my son afflict him more for her than doth Alexi, who this day doth wed fair Galatea, and forgets the debt? Oh, and here the shepherds come to celebrate his joyful nuptials with all merriment, which doth increase my cares, considering the comforts of the good parents to receive, and therefore, good Palaemon, work all means therefore, good Palaemon, work all means you can to win him from his peevish will, and draw him to these shows, to companies, that others' pleasures may enkindle his. And tell him what a sin he doth commit to waste his youth in solitariness, and take a course to end us all in him.
Assure yourself, Charinus. As I have, so will I still employ my utmost power to save him, for methinks it pity were so rare a piece of worth should be so lost, that ought to be preserved at any cost.
Exit Palaemon. Remains Charinus on stage. Act 3, Scene 2. Enter Medorus.
Medorus, come, we two must sit and mourn whilst others revel. We are not for sports or nuptial shows, which will but show us more our miseries in being both deprived the comforts of our issue, which might have, and was as like to have, made our hearts as joyful now as others are in theirs.
Indeed, Charinus, I for my part have just cause to grieve amidst these festivals, for they should have been mine. This day I should have seen my daughter Sylvia, how she would have womaned it. These rites had been her grace, and she had sat in Galatea's place, and now had warmed my heart to see my blood preserved in her, had she not been so rapt and rent from off the living as she was. But your case is not parallel with mine. You have a son, Charinus, that doth live, and may one day to you like comforts give.
Indeed, I have a son, but yet to say he lives, I cannot. For who lives not to the world nor to himself cannot be said to live. For ever since that you your daughter lost, I lost my son. From that day hath he bricked in shades and solitariness, shut himself up from sight or company of any living. And as now I heard by good Palaemon, vows still to do.
And did your son, my daughter, love so dear? Now, good Charinus, I must grieve the more, if more my heart could suffer than it doth. For now I feel the horror of my deed in having crossed the worthiest match on earth. Now I perceive why Sylvia did refuse to marry with Alexis, having made a worthier choice, which, oh, had I had grace to have foreseen, perhaps this dismal chance never had been, and now they both had had joy of their loves, and we the like of them. But my greedy eye, viewing the large and spacious sheep walks joining unto mine, whereof Alexis was possessed, made me, as worldlings do, desire to marry grounds, and not affections, which have other bounds. How oft have I with threats, with promises, with all persuasions, sought to win her mind to fancy him, yet all would not prevail. How oft has she again upon her knees with tears besought me, "O dear father mine, do not enforce me to accept a man I cannot fancy. Rather take from me the life you gave me than afflict it so." Yet all this would not alter mine intent. This was the man she must affect, or none. But what sin was this to torture so a heart forevowed unto a better choice, where goodness met in one the self-same point, and virtues answered in an equal joint. Sure, Charinus, for this sin of mine, the gods bereft me of my child, and would not have her to be without her heart, nor me take joy where I did none impart.
Medorus, thus we see men's wretchedness that learns his errors but by their success. And when there is no remedy, and now we can but wish it had been otherwise.
And in that wish, Charinus, we are racked. But I remember now, I often have had shadows in my sleep that figures bear of some such liking twixt your child and mine. And this last night a pleasing dream I had, though dreams of joy make wakers' minds more sad. Methought my daughter Sylvia was returned in most strange fashion, and upon her knees craves my good will for Thyrsis, otherwise she would be gone again and seen no more. I, at the sight of my dear child, was rapt with that excess of joy as gave no time either for me to answer her request or leave for sleep to figure out the rest.
Alas, Medorus, dreams are vapours, which engendered with day thoughts fall in the night and vanish with the morning, are but made afflictions unto man, to the end he might not rest in rest, but toil both day and night. But see, here comes my solitary son. To stand close, Medorus, out of sight, and note how he behaves himself in this affliction and distressed case of his.
This is the day, the lamentable day of my destruction, which the sun hath twice returned unto my grief, which kept one course continually with it in motion like, but that they never set. This day doth claim the especial tribute of my sighs and tears, though every day I dully pay my tears unto that soul which this day left the world, and yet I know not why. Methoughts the sun arose this day with far more cheerful rays, with brighter beams than it usually it did, as if it would bring something of release unto my cares, or else my spirit have had some manner of intelligence with hope, wherewith my heart is unacquainted yet, and that might cause mine eye with quicker sense to note the appearing of the eye of heaven. Something sure I feel which doth bear up the weight of sorrow easier than before.
What, Thyrsis, still in passion, still one man? For shame, show not yourself so weakly set, so feebly jointed, that you cannot bear the fortunes of the world like other men. Believe me, Thyrsis, you much wrong your worth. This is to be no man, to have no powers. Passions are women's parts, actions are ours. I was in hope to have found you otherwise.
How otherwise, Palaemon? Do you hold it to be a most heroic thing to act one man and do that part exact? Can there be in the world more worthiness change than to be constant? Is there anything shows more a man? What would you have me? That were to have me base, that were indeed to show a feeble heart and weakly set. No, Palaemon, I should think myself the most unworthy man of men, should I but let a thought into this heart of mine that might disturb or shake my constancy. And think, Palaemon, I have combats too, to be the man I am, being built of flesh, and having round about me traitors too, that seek to undermine my powers and steal into my weaknesses, but that I keep continual watch and ward upon myself, lest I should be surprised at unawares, and taken from my vows with other snares. And even now, at this instant, I confess, Palaemon, I do feel a certain touch of comfort, which I fear to entertain, lest it should be some spy sent as a train to make discovery of what strength I am.
Ah, worthy Thyrsis, entertain that spirit, whatever else thou do. Set all the doors of thine affections open thereunto.
Palaemon, no comfort, and I have been so long time strangers as that now I fear to let it in. I know not how to acquaint myself therewith, being used to converse with other humours that affect me best. Nor do I love to have mixed company, whereto I must of force myself apply.
But, Thyrsis, think that this must have an end, and more it would approve your worth to make the same your work than time should make it his.
And sure it must, Palaemon, but with me, For so I by the oracle was told, that very day wherein I lost the day and light of comfort that can never rise again to me, when I, the saddest man that ever breathed before those altars fell, and there besought to know what was become of my dear Sylvia, whether dead or how, rest from the world, but that I could not learn. Yet thus much did that voice divine return: Go, youth, reserve thyself, the day will come, thou shalt be happy, and return again. But when shall be that day? Demanded I. The day thou diest, replied the oracle. So that you see it will not be in these, but in the Elysian fields, where I shall joy. The day of death must bring me happiness.
You may mistake the meaning of those words, which is not known before it be fulfilled. Yield you to what the gods command, if not unto your friends' desires. Reserve yourself for better days, and think the oracle is not untrue, although not understood. But howsoever, let it not be said that Thyrsis, being a man of so rare parts, so understanding and discreet, should pine in love and languish for a silly woman thus, to be the fable of the vulgar, made a scorn and laughed at by inferior wits.
In love, Palaemon, how know you what you say? Do you esteem it light to be in love? How have I been mistaken in the choice of such a friend as I held you to be, that seems not, or else doth not, understand the noblest portion of humanity, the worthiest piece of nature set in man? Know that when you mention love, you name a sacred mystery, a deity, not understood of creatures built of mud, but of the purest and refined clay, whereto the eternal fires their spirits convey. And for a woman, which you prize so low, like men that do forget from whence they are men, know her to be the especial creature made by the creator of the complement of this great architect the world, to hold the same together which would otherwise fall all asunder, and is nature's chief vicegerent upon earth, supplies her state. And do you hold it weakness then to love, and love so excellent a miracle as is a worthy woman? Then let me still be so weak, let me love and pine in contemplation of that clean, clear soul that made mine see that nothing in the world is so supremely beautiful as it. Think not it was those colours, white and red, laid but on flesh, that could afflict me so, but something else, which thought holds under lock, and hath no key of words to open it. They are the smallest pieces of the mind that pass the narrow organ of the voice. The great remain behind in that vast orb of the apprehension, and are never born. And therefore, if your judge cannot reach into the understanding of my case, you do not well to put yourself into my jury to condemn me as you do. Let the ignorant out of their dullness laugh at these my sufferings. I will pity them, to have been so ill born, so miscomposed, as not to know what thing it is to love. And I to great Apollo here appeal, the sovereign of the muses, and of all well-tuned affections, and to Cynthia bright and glorious lady of clear faithfulness, who from above look down with blissful beams upon our humble groves, and joy the hearts of all the world to see their mutual loves. They can judge what worthiness there is in worthy love. Therefore, Palaemon, peace, unless you did know better what it were. And this be sure, when as that fire goes out in man, he is the miserablest thing on earth. His daylight sets, and is all dark and dull within, no motions of delight, but all oppressed lies struggling with the weight of worldly cares. And this old Damon says, who well had felt what love was in his days.
Well, Thyrsis, well, however you do gild your passions to endear them to yourself, you never shall induce me to believe that sicknesses can be of such effect. And so farewell until you shall be well.
And they exit. We've skipped some scene naming. Act 3, Scene 5, Return to the Fore of Medorus and Charinus.
Oh, gods! Charinus, what a man is this? Who ever heard of such a constancy? Had I but known him in enjoying him as now I do, too late in losing him, how blessed had been mine age! But oh, I was unworthy of so great a blessedness.
You see, Medorus, how no counsel can prevail to turn the current of his will, to make it run in any other course than what it doth, so that I say I must esteem him irrevocably lost. But hark, the shepherds' festivals begin. This is from hence, where sadness were a sin.
And here was presented a rural marriage conducted with this song.
From the temple to the board, from the board unto the bed, we conduct your maidenhead, wishing Hymen to afford all the pleasures that he can, twixt a woman and a man.
End of Act 3. So many questions about that chorus moment there. There does seem to be a hint that there may be some mask elements going on of big dance numbers and dumb show and other stuff. So here was presented a rural marriage. I feel that this probably goes on for a while, especially as it's wishing Hymen to afford, which follows the title, and of course it's during literally a wedding, so mirroring the nuptials of the things. Wow, wasn't that a good bit of text I luckily stumbled on because someone dropped out last minute. That was good.
Yeah, Thyrsis has some unexpectedly nice bits. If the brief is a shepherd who's in mourning for his shepherdess who he supposes dead, it could be way duller than this, but it's very nicely written.
Yeah, I mean, it feels absolutely, and for at a wedding to really, really go, love is a really important, amazing thing. Don't mess around with it.
Was it last week? Did we say last week that this would make a good Valentine's Day play?
I don't think we actually said it in session. But yeah, it's definitely, certainly I was looking at bits of this going, this is good for a sort of Valentine's Day mashup show of all the lovey stuff. But yeah, this has got some really, really good stuff. I'm really enjoying that. And also just the fact you've got the two fathers who are sort of doing this. One of them's going, oh, wasn't that a wonderful defense of love? And the other one's going, well, he's never going to change his mind, is he? He's just he doesn't wait, no compromise with him.
Well, yeah, but I like the dads. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. Someone else should probably talk. But
Nobody's waving.
Dads are so often an obstacle in the plot. And these dads are actually pretty reasonable. Lynsey.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good point, that usually the old obstinate father is, initially the cause and needs to be won over, but isn't usually won over by oration, is usually won over by some sort of, deus ex machina or some kind of, some kind of peril or something like that. I mean, I'm saying that as if
ruse.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm saying this as if I know all the plays in which these sorts of fathers appears, but I just it just struck me that that's it was a beautiful kind of speech that Thyrsis had, and it's absolutely changed Medorus's heart, and I think that's sort of fantastic, really.
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing we're getting into now. These beautiful, soulful passages where people are speaking their hearts and minds. Forgive me, speaking their hearts and minds. I mean, the next lines of Thyrsis. I thought these simple woods, these gentle trees would, and It's changed the whole. It's not just entertainment anymore. It's soulful.
Yeah, I love the way that we get this sort of very binary gender thing of, be a man with men, and he totally knocks it down later on, and that it really sort of just says, no, that's just rubbish, go away. And he's just really great. I do feel like Palaemon sort of goes with his tail between his legs a bit, even though he's sort of being, well, you never convince me. But you don't quite. It's not a very long speech as he leaves. He's got nothing. He's got nothing to come back with. Well, I enjoyed that. I hope you did too, because there's more of him to come. Apologies for that. He's literally impossible to double him with anyone else. So you're stuck with me. Because you all talk to him at some point. Okay. We'll go into Act 4 unless anyone else has any thoughts. No. Act 4. And as we go along, someone leap in and do some of the act and scene things if it's not you. Because it's not going to be me. So yes, it's because Act 4 Scene 1 starts with Thyrsis alone. I thought these simple woods, these gentle trees would, in regard I am their daily guest, and harbour underneath their shady roofs, not have consented to delude my griefs, and mock my miseries with false reports, but now I see they will afflict me too. For as I came by yonder spreading beech, which often have the secretary been to my sad thoughts, while I have rested me, if love had ever rest, under his gentle shade, I found, encarved, and fair encarved, these words: Thy Sylvia, Thyrsis, lives, and is returned. Oh me, that any hand would thus add scorn unto affliction, and a hand so fair as this may seem to be, which were more fit, methinks, for good than to do injury. For sure no virtue should be ill employed. And which is more, the name of Sylvia was carved in the self-same kind of character which she alive did use, and where withal subscribed her vows to me, who knows it best, which shows the fraud, the more and more the wrong. Therefore, you stars of that high court of heaven, which do reveal deceits and punish them, let not this crime too faint a hand to cozen my desires escape your doom. Nor let these riots of intrusion made upon my loveness by strange company afflict me thus, but let me have some rest. Come then, refresher of all living things, soft sleep, come gently and take truce with these oppressors, but come simple and alone, without these images of fantasy which hurt me more than thou canst do me good. Let me not sleep, unless I could sleep all.
Act 4, Scene 2. Enter Palaemon to Thyrsis. Alas, he here hath laid him down to rest. It were now sin his quiet to molest, and God forbid I should. I will retire and leave him, for I know his griefs require the poor relievement of a little sleep.
What spirit haunts me here? What no time free? Oh, is it you, Palaemon? Would to God you would forbear me but a little while. You show your care of me too much in this. Unseasonable love scarce kindness is.
Good Thyrsis, I am sorry I should give the least occasion of dis-ease to you. I will be gone, and leave you to your rest.
Oh, do, good Palaemon, go your way, farewell. And yet, Palaemon, stay. Perhaps you may, by charms you have, cause sleep to close mine eyes. For you were wont, I do remember well, to sing me sonnets, which in passion I composed in my happier days, whenas her beams inflamed my spirits, which now are set. And if you can remember it, I pray, sing me the song which thus begins, Eyes hide my love, which I did write upon the earnest charge she gave unto me to conceal our love.
Eyes hide my love, and do not show to any but to her my notes, who only doth that cipher know, wherewith we pass our secret thoughts. Belie your looks in others' sight, and wrong yourselves to do her right. So, now he sleeps, or else doth seem to sleep. But howsoever, I will not trouble him.
And exit Palaemon, leaving Thyrsis asleep. Act 4, Scene 3. Enter Clarindo to Thyrsis.
See where he lies, whom I so long to see. Ah, my dear Thyrsis, take thy quiet rest. I know thou needst it. Sleep thy fill, sweet love. Let nothing trouble thee. Be calm, O winds, be still, you herds. Chirp not so loud, sweet birds, lest you should wake my love. Thou, gentle bank, that thus art blessed to bear so dear a weight, be soft unto these dainty limbs of his. Ply tender grass, and render sweet refresh unto his weary senses, whilst he rests. Oh, could I now but put off this disguise, with those respects that fetter my desire, how closely could I neighbour that sweet side! But stay, he stirs. I fear my heart hath brought my feet too near, and I have wakened him.
It will not be. Sleep is no friend of mine, or such a friend as leaves a man when most he needs him. Oh, see a new assault. Who now? Ah, 'tis the boy that was with me erewhiles, that gentle boy. I am content to speak with him. He speaks so prettily, so sweet, and with so good respective modesty, and much resembles one I knew once well. Come hither, boy. What hast thou there?
A token sent you from the nymph I serve.
Keep it, my boy, and wear it on thy head.
The gods forbid that I, a servant, should wear it on my head, that which my mistress hath prepared for yours. Sir, I beseech you, urge no more a thing so ill becoming me.
Nay, sure, I think it better will become thy head than mine, and therefore, boy, thou must needs put it on.
I trust your loneliness hath not so uncivilled you to force a messenger to do against good manners and his will.
No, good my boy, but I entreat thee now, let me but put it on. Hold still thy head. It shall not be thy act, but only mine. Let it alone, good boy, for if thou sawest how well it did become thee, sure thou wouldst. Now, canst thou sing, my boy, some gentle song?
I cannot sing, but I could weep.
Weep? Why?
Because I am not as I wish to be.
Why, so are none. Be not displeased for this. And if you cannot sing, tell me some tale to pass the time.
That I can do, did I but know what kind of tale you liked.
No merry tale, my boy. Nor yet too sad, but mixed, like the tragi-comedies.
Then such a tale I have, and a true tale. Believe me, sir, although not written yet in any book, but sure it will, I know. Some gentle shepherd, moved with passion, must record it to the world, and well, it will become the world to understand the same. And this is it. There was sometimes a nymph, Isulia named, and an Arcadian born. Fair can I not avouch she was, but chaste and honest sure, as the event will prove, whose mother, dying, left her very young unto her father's charge, who carefully did breed her up until she came to years of womanhood, and then provides a match both rich and young and fit enough for her. But she, who to another shepherd had, called Thyrsis, vowed her love as unto one her heart esteemed more worthy of her love, could not by all her father's means be wrought to leave her choice and to forego her vow.
No more could my dear Sylvia be from me.
Which caused much affliction to them both.
And so the self-same cause did unto us.
This nymph one day, surcharged with love and grief, which commonly, the more the pity, dwell as inmates both together, walking forth with other maids to fish upon the shore, strays apart and leaves her company to entertain herself with her own thoughts, and wanders on so far and out of sight, as she at length was suddenly surprised by pirates, who lay lurking underneath those hollow rocks, expecting there some prize. And notwithstanding all her piteous cries, entreaty, tears, and prayers, those fierce men rent hair and veil and carried her by force into their ship, which in a little creek hard by at anchor lay, and presently hoist sail, and so away.
Rent hair and veil, and so both hair and veil of Sylvia I found rent, which here I keep with me. But now, alas, what did she do? What became of her, my boy?
When she was thus inshipped, and woefully had cast her eyes about to view that hell of horror wherein she was so suddenly implunged, she spies a woman sitting with a child sucking her breast, which was the captain's wife. To her she creeps, down at her feet she lies. O woman, if that name of woman may move you to pity, pity a poor maid, the most distressed soul that ever breathed, and save me from the hands of these fierce men. Let me not be defiled and made unclean, dear woman, now, and I will be to you the faithfulest slave that ever mistress served. Never poor soul shall be more dutiful to do whatever you command than I. No toil will I refuse, so that I may keep this poor body clean and undeflowered, which is all I will ever seek. For to know it is not fear of death lays me thus low, but of that stain will make my death to blush.
What? Would not all this move the woman's heart?
All this would nothing move the woman's heart, whom yet she would not leave, but still besought. O woman, by that infant at your breast, and by the pains it cost you in the birth, save me, as ever you desire to have your babe to joy and prosper in the world, which will the better prosper sure, if you shall mercy show, which is with mercy paid. Then kisses she her feet, then kisses too the infant's feet. And, "O sweet babe," said she, "couldst thou but to thy mother speak for me, and crave her to have pity on my case, thou mightst perhaps prevail with her so much, although I cannot. Child, couldst thou speak." The infant, whether by her touching it or by instinct of nature, seeing her weep, looks earnestly upon her, and then looks upon the mother, and then on her again, and then it cries, and then on either looks. which she perceiving, blessed child, said she, although thou canst not speak, yet dost thou cry unto thy mother for me. Hear thy child, dear mother, it's for me it cries, it's all the speech it hath. Accept those cries. Save me at his request from being defiled. Let pity move thee, that thus moves thy child. The woman, though by birth and custom rude, yet having veins of nature, could not be but pierceable, did feel at length the point of pity enter so, as out gushed tears, not usual to stern eyes, and she besought her husband to bestow on her that prize, with safeguard of her body at her will. The captain, seeing his wife, the child, the nymph, all crying to him in this piteous sort, felt his rough nature shaken too, and grants his wife's request, and seals his grant with tears. And so they wept all four for company, and some beholders stood not with dry eyes, such passion wrought the passion of their prize.
In truth, my boy, and even thy telling it moves me likewise. Thou dost so feelingly report the same, as if thou hadst been by. But I imagine now how this poor nymph, when she received that doom, was comforted.
Sir, never was there pardon that did take condemned from the block more joyful than this grant to her. For all her misery seemed nothing to the comfort she received by being thus saved from impurity. And from the woman's feet she would not part, nor trust her hand to be without some hold of her or of the child, so long as she remained within the ship, which in few days arrives at Alexandria, whence these pirates were. And there this woeful maid for 2 years' space did serve, and truly serve, this captain's wife, who would not lose the benefit of her attendance for all her profit otherwise, but daring not in such a place as that to trust herself in woman's habit, craved that she might be apparelled like a boy, and so she was, and as a boy she served.
And 2 years 'tis since I my Sylvia lost.
At 2 years' end, her mistress sends her forth unto the port for some commodities, which whilst she sought for, going up and down, she heard some merchantmen of Corinth talk, who spake that language the Arcadians did, and were next neighbours of one continent. To them, all rapt with passion, down she kneels, tells them she was a poor distressed boy, born in Arcadia, and by pirates took and made a slave in Egypt, and besought them, as they fathers were of children, or did hold their native country dear, they would take pity on her, and relieve her youth from that sad servitude wherein she lived, for which she hoped that she had friends alive would thank them one day, and reward them too. If not, yet that she knew the heavens would do. The merchants, moved with pity of her case, being ready to depart, took her with them, and landed her upon her country coast, wherein when she found herself, she prostrate falls, kisses the ground, thanks gives unto the gods, thanks them who had been her deliverers. And on she trudges through the desert woods, climbs over craggy rocks and mountains steep, wades through rivers, struggles through bogs, sustained only by the force of love, until she came unto the native plains, unto the fields where first she drew her breath. There lifts she up her eyes, salutes the air, salutes the trees, the bushes, flowers, and all. And, "Oh, dear Thyrsis, here I am," said she. "Here, Notwithstanding all my miseries, I am the same I was to thee, a pure, a chaste, and spotless maid. Oh, that I may,
or else no man, for boy who truly loves must ever so, that die will never out, and who but would love truly such a soul?
but now the better to have notice how the state of things then stood, and not in haste to cast herself on new encumbrances, she kept her habit still, and put herself to serve a nymph, of whom she had made choice, till time were fitting to reveal herself.
This may be Sylvia's case. This may be she. But it is not. Let me consider well the teller, and the circumstance agree. And Clarindo is, and Thyrsis remain as we go into Act 4, Scene 4. But we'll just briefly pause there, just to take in story hour. I love it when we have a bit of storytelling, because, that's my job. So I like to have a little bit of that. But yeah, it's all... Tell it to the baby. Tell it to the baby. Get the babies crying saves the day. I like that, and it's like Thyrsis, and it's just that bit at the end. Oh dear, Thyrsis, yeah, literally just saying, "Here I am," and he just goes, "Yeah, but it's clearly somebody else." But I'll think about it for a bit. Yeah, I'll think about that. Yeah. Thoughts on the room? Anyone want to leap in before we go into the final elements of Act 4? Lynsey, and then Tom.
Yeah, just to say, I don't think there's a huge amount of complexity here to unravel. It's just, it's just a lovely, lovely sort of pre-recognition scene.
Yeah, it's getting to do all the love scene without, having to actually do the love scene, or you're doing the love scene, but they're not quite sure. And yeah, it's playful. And of course, it's one of those things, with a modern production, you could throw all sorts of things at this stuff, depending on what the performers do with it or what they want to do with it, and the dynamics of it. It's full of interesting potentiality. And who doesn't like a story about pirates? Come on, who doesn't like pirates? Tom.
I was just saying, I'm sold. I was spellbound by it. It was like talking books. It was mesmerizing. Yeah, I was really following along and rooting for her and thanking the baby.
Yeah,
it was beautifully written and performed. Thank you.
So.
Liza. It's a difficult brief. Sylvia tells Thyrsis, who just woke up, for God's sake, she tells him the story of her long exile and adventures and pirates. You have to have pirates. Can't have one of these plays without pirates. You have foresters versus shepherds versus pirates versus probably zombies, maybe some ninjas. I don't know, but a speech that length, again, in the hands of a lesser writer, could have become dull, but it was like Thyrsis' Lamentations. It was very, very well written, and one couldn't ask for a better voice.
I enjoyed it. Okay, well, we were hoping to have a tragic comedy. As we're going to Act 4, Scene 4, Montanus, who had earlier been briefed to terrorise the little boy who is Clarindo, who is actually Sylvia. So while Clarindo and Thyrsis are still on stage, enter Montanus to Thyrsis. Chorus is also in attendance.
Sarah, have I found you? Are you here, you pringcock boy? And with your garland on? Doth this attire become your peevish head? Come, I must teach you better manners, boy.
And Montanus stabs Clarindo and dashes off his garland.
So, Phillis, I have done my task, and here I bring the trophy to confirm the same.
Ah, monster man, vile wretch, what hast thou done? Alas, in what a strait am I engaged here? If I pursue revenge, I leave to save. Help, help, you gentle swains, if any now be here. Beast, help, help, oh hark, Q echo helps me cry.
What means this outcry? Sure, some savage disturbs our herds, or else some wolf has seized upon a lamb.
A worse thing than a wolf, more bloody than a beast, hath murdered here a gentler creature than a lamb. Therefore, good swains, pursue the homicide, that ugly wretch Montanus, who hath stabbed this silly creature here at unawares.
Montanus? Why, we met him but even now, decked with a garland, grumbling to himself. We will attach that villain presently. Come, sirs, make haste, and let's do after him.
And exit the chorus, leaving Thyrsis and Clarindo on stage. Act 4, Scene 5, enter Palaemon.
Alas, what accident is here fallen out? My dear friend Thyrsis, how comes this to pass?
That monster man Montanus here hath stabbed a harmless youth in message sent to me. Now, good Palaemon, help me hold him up, and see if that we can recover him.
It may be Thyrsis more his fear than hurt. Stay him a while, and I will haste and send for Lamia, who with ointments, oil, and herbs, if any help remain, will help him sure.
Do, good Palaemon, make what haste you may, seek out for help, and be not long away. Alas, sweet boy, that thou shouldst ever have so hard misfortune coming unto me, and end thy tale with this sad tragedy. That tale which well resembled Sylvia's case, which thou resemblest, for such brows had she, such a proportioned face, and such a neck. What have we here? The mole of Sylvia too? What? And her breasts? What? And her hair? What? All Sylvia? Yes, all Sylvia, and all dead. And art thou thus returned to me again? Art thou thyself that strange delivered nymph? And didst thou come to tell me thine escape from death to die before me? Had I not enough to do to well-reported arms, but thou must come to bleed within my arms? Was not one death sufficient for my griefs, but that thou must die twice? Why thou wert dead to me before, why must thou die again? Better had it been still to be lost than thus to have been found, yet better found though thus than so lost as was thought before. For howsoever now I have thee yet, though in the saddest fashion that may be, yet Sylvia, now I have thee, and will I no more for ever part with thee again. And we this benefit shall have here thereby, though fate would not permit us both to have one bed, yet, Sylvia, we shall have one grave. And that is something, and much more than I, expecting ever, could have come to pass. And sure the gods but only sent thee thus to fetch me, and to take me thence with thee. And Sylvia, so thou shalt. I ready am to accompany thy soul, and that with speed. The strings, I feel, are all dissolved that hold this woeful heart, reserved, it seems, for this, and well reserved for this so dear an end. And they exit Act 4, Scene 6, enter Chorus and Palaemon.
So we have took the villain and him bound fast to an oak as rugged as himself, and there he stares and gapes in the air and raves like a wild beast that's taken in the toil, and so he shall remain, till time we see what will become of this his savage act.
Cheer, Thyrsis. Lamia will come presently and bring the best preservatives she hath. What now? Who lies discovered here? Ay me, a woman dead? Is this that boy transformed? Why, this is Sylvia! Oh, good Thyrsis, how comes this to pass? Friend Thyrsis? Thyrsis, speak. Good Thyrsis, tell me. Out, alas, he swoons as well as she, and both seem gone alike. Come, gentle herdsman, come and carry them to yonder sheepcote quickly, that we may, if possible, recover them again. If not, perform those rites that appertain unto so rare a couple. Come, my friends, make haste.
And now we have the fourth not song of the chorus. We have a question and answer, and Greg, I'll ask you to be the answer, please.
Were ever chaste and honest hearts exposed unto so great distress?
Yes, they that act the worthiest parts most commonly have worse successes. Great fortunes follow not the best, it's virtue that is most distressed. Then, fortune, why do we admire the glory of thy great successes? Since by thee what men acquire, thy work and not their words expresses. Nor dost thou raise them for their good, but to have their ills more understood.
And they actually remain on stage, by the looks of it. We have a lot of remaining on stage. I said they exited earlier. They didn't. The Sylvia is dead, and Thyrsis swoons over the body there. So yeah, we have, after story time, after this lengthy moment of stillness, of telling tragic tales, with this sudden moment of violence and death and recognition, and then swooning and recognition from everyone, and sad times, people. This is the tragic bit. Don't worry, it's a tragi-comedy, so everything will be fine. Just relax, breathe.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to. Does Lamia ever appear on stage? Because now we're getting into sort of like a character who could conceivably be a bit of a sorceress, and that always intrigues me.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Unfortunately, I do not see the name in the cast list.
Well, she's a useful MacGuffin anyway. We know that it's been established now that we have a woman who's really, really good with herbs and can brew you a herbal tea that will just cure anything.
And to be fair, we have got other sorceresses of herbalist tendencies in other plays. So if we feel we need one, I think we could probably crowbar one in. I don't have a problem with that. And the thing is, this isn't a short play in terms of word count, but it does move a hell of a lick. I know we're not stopping and starting as often as we do, but we really shouldn't be this near the end of this time. Especially as we started so late. This play really moves, and so it's really not. It will be a long show if you did it with all presumably the songs and the dancing that we're supposed to have had earlier. But it says Act 4 going into Act 5, but in a sense this is just continuing action into Act 5 that we're about to start, and there isn't actually that much left to go. So don't necessarily expect a lot of sudden new people to turn up. Per se. In fact, I'm looking at this going, missing anything. I always get a bit paranoid at this, but we've had a couple of evening sessions where it was unfortunately missing scenes. So I suddenly start getting textual anxiety. But no, seems to be fine. Other thoughts before we go into Act 5?
Just to commend it again. It's a fabulous text. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nicely paced, even though Thyrsis's lamentation over Sylvia is the only point where the plot really stops. Sylvia, Clarindo's speech is action, as it were, or it's story being unfolded. Thyrsis's speech, once she is stabbed and dies, very nicely delivered, Rob, I thought.
Came out well.
Thyrsis's speech, the plot stops for Lamentations. In Baroque opera terms, that's an aria, but it feels earned because, as you say, the play has moved along so fast.
I mean, I have to say, I suddenly dreaded. I suddenly went, "Oh God, I'm going to have to do emotional, lover, sad speech stuff." But it was actually very easy to get into. It felt natural to do, and there, I did struggle a little bit with the line "what and her breasts," which was just going, "What are you doing, man?"
Not as bad as the butt. Come on. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So there was a little moment of just go, no, just say that relatively quickly and then get on to the next bit. Lynsey.
Who's loosening her collars?
Yes.
Well, I was going to say, just if she's been stabbed, then he's, got to investigate the wound and everything. So I think staging it wouldn't be. I mean, it probably would be a bit funny, but.
It's just the way. It's a very bold line. I mean, isn't it bold? It just suddenly comes out of nowhere. But yeah, I mean, it's good, and the mole of Sylvia too. Obviously, a very famous mole. Lives in a hole, and knows that this is none of its business. No, that's a very different mole. Anyone knows who I'm talking about. I've just really, really lowered the tone. Anyway, we will move on into Act 5 if no one else has any thoughts. Just to say. So, essentially continuing action as the chorus is speaking and Palaemon comes back.
Did ever yet Arcadia hear before of two so worthy lovers, as we find Thyrsis and Sylvia were, or ever had clear truth, and simple constancy, constant honesty? So lamentable an event as this, but here comes forth Palaemon. We shall now learn for all of him what hath been done within.
Go, Palio, summon all the Arcadian youth here round about, and will them to prepare to celebrate with all delights they can this joyful hour that hath restored to us the worthiest pair of hearts that ever were. Will them to show the height of music's art, and all the strains of cunning they can show, that we may make these rocks and hills about ring with the echo of redoubled notes. And will Charinus and Medorus too, the aged parents of this worthy pair, to come with speed, whose joy, good souls, will be more than their speed. And yet their speed, I know, will be beyond the allowance of their years, when they shall understand this happy news, and summon likewise all the train of nymphs that glorify our plains, and all that can give honor to this day. Go, Palio, haste away, and as you go, unbind Montanus, that rude savage swain, and though he be unworthy to be here, yet let him come. He hath been, in his days, held a good fellow, howsoever now his rage and love transported him in this.
Palaemon, we are glad to see you thus. Delightful. How now we hope there is good news.
Good news, my friends, and I will tell it you. Sylvia and Thyrsis being to my cottage brought, the skilful Lamia comes, and searched the wound which Sylvia had received of this rude swain. And finding it not deadly, she applied those remedies she knew of best effects, and binds it up, and pours into her mouth such cordial waters as revive the spirits, and so much wrought, as she at length perceived life was not quite gone out, but lay oppressed. with like endeavours we on Thyrsis work administered like cordials unto him. At length we might hear Sylvia fetch a groan, and therewithal Thyrsis perceived to move. Then Thyrsis fet a groan, and Sylvia moved, as if their lives were made both of one piece. Whereat we joyed, and then removed, and set each before other, and held up their heads, and chafed their temples, and rubbed and stroked their cheeks. Wherewith first Sylvia casts up her dim eyes, and presently did Thyrsis lift up his, and then again they both together sighed, and each on other fixed an unseeing eye, for yet 'twas scarce the twilight of their new returning day, out of the night of death. And though they saw, they did not yet perceive each other, and yet both turned to one point, as touched alike, and held their looks direct. At length we might perceive, as life began to appear and make the morning in their eyes, their beams were clearer, and their opener looks did show as if they took some little note of each the other, yet not so as they could thoroughly discern who themselves were. And then we took and joined their hands in one, and held them so a while, until we felt how even others' touch the motion gave unto their feeling, and they trembling wrung their hands together, and so held them locked, looked still upon each other, but no words at all. Then we called out to Thyrsis, Thyrsis, look, it is thy Sylvia thou here holdst. She is returned, revived, and safe. Sylvia, behold, thou hast thy Thyrsis, and shall ever have him thine. Then we did set them both upon their feet, and there they stood, in act, even as before, looking upon each other, hand in hand. Last we saw a blushing red appear in both their cheeks, which sense sent as a lamp to guide their understanding, and forthwith the tears gushed forth their eyes, which hindered them a while from seeing each other till they had cleared them out again. And then, as if new waked from out a fearful dream, they stand and doubt whether they were awake indeed, or else still in a dream, distrusting their own eyes. Their long-endured miseries would not let them believe their sudden happiness, although they saw it, till with much ado they had confirmed their credit, and had kissed each other, and embraced, and kissed again, and yet still dumb. Their joy now seemed to be too busy with their thoughts to allow them words. And then they walked a little, and stood still, then walked again, and still held other fast, as if they feared they should be lost again. And when at last they spake, it was but thus: O Sylvia, and O Thyrsis. And there stopped. We, lest our sight and presence so many hinder might the passage of being there, their modest, simple, and unpractised love, came all our way, and only Lamia left, whose spirit and that sufficient skill she hath will serve, no doubt, to see they shall do well.
Well may they do, dear couple, who have thus graced our Arcasia, and with their faithfulness.
And they exit. So yes, all is resolved with some offstage action. I definitely feel a dumb show is needed for this bit. I think it's beautifully written, but again, this is where I'm starting to feel that there is a logistical thing about the stage space that they have, that there is no room for anyone. That you can only have about 3 people on stage at any one time, maybe 4. It's a bit cramped, and you know the things are being deliberately kept simple and storytelling, which is cool. I like storytelling, and that is not a problem. But I really love the way that, you know, rather than Sylvia and Thyrsis doing this great long love speeches to each other, they just go, oh, Sylvia, oh, Thyrsis, throw themselves into each other's arms, and everyone goes, get a bucket, someone. Get a bucket of water. Just look away. Look away.
We just leave. We
just
left
leave them to it.
At that point.
You're so cynical.
No.
My heart has melted.
Lynsey.
I was actually thinking during that it could be really fun to have a kind of shadow play going on if the staging allowed, which could really counterpoint nicely, the action, but in shadow behind a scrim or however you do it, would be nice.
Yeah, I like shadows. Yes,
I like that idea very much, because at some point we're probably going to have a triumphant re-entrance of the alive in their own person, Thyrsis and Sylvia, and it would. I liked Rob's idea of a dumb show, but I thought, how is that going to affect the moment of that re-entrance when they see them both together and alive? And I think shadows would be a really good way of conveying that.
And it does mean that we could have Lamia with some absolutely fabulous headdress or something, so everybody would know that was Lamia.
All hail to the fabulous Lamia. Not to disappoint Liza, but the next scene is going with a very different vibe from what you're hoping for. For instead, not... Tom.
No, can I just, in the next scene now, if Greg has not... Are you reading it? Can you do your Cloris, Greg?
Do your Cloris. Do your turn.
Okay, I'll read Cloris.
Yay.
Yay, continuity Cloris. That's cool. Cool with me. So Act 5, Scene 2, we don't have the arrival of Sylvia and Thyrsis or any of them. What we have are the Left Behinds. Everyone who didn't get what they wanted. Enter Phillis, Lidia, and Cloris.
What shall we do now, Lydia? Now am I utterly shamed this youth-turned-woman is. Clarindo, Sylvia is become. How now? Can I forever look on her again, or come in any company for shame? Now must I needs be made a common jest and laughing-stock to everyone that shall but hear how grossly I behaved myself.
Faith, Phillis, as 'tis fallen out, your case is very crazy. And to make it whole, there is no way but even to laugh it out, and set as good a face as you can do upon the matter, and say thus: how you knew well enough it was no man whom you affected so, who never could love man, nor ever would, and that by mere instinct and sympathy of sex, you fancied him. So put it off, turn it into a jest.
That shall I never do, but ever blush at her to think what she will think of me, who did bewray myself thus foolishly.
Are you here, Cloris? You are blessed today for being mistress unto such a boy. You may rejoice that ever this fell out.
Joyce? Ha! Lydia, never there were nymph had more occasion to be sad than I, for I am quite undone and shamed hereby. For I employed this, my supposed boy, in a message unto Thyrsis, whom I loved, must confess more dearly than my life, and told him all the secrets of my heart, and therefore with what face can ever I look upon them that know thus much by me? So did it. I will now take Thyrsis' course, hide me forever in these desert woods, and never come in company again. They shall not laugh at me in their great joys.
But Cloris, I would laugh with them were I as you, and howsoever felt myself within, yet would I seem be otherwise without. Cannot you say that you knew well enough how it was Sylvia that you entertained, although you would not seem to take such note, and thereupon employed her in that sort to Thyrsis, knowing who it was would give to him the greatest comfort upon earth? And thus, fair nymphs, you fitly may excuse these simple slips, and know that they shall still have crosses with their piles, who thus do play their fortunes with their loves, as you two did. But you must frame your countenance thereto, and look with other faces than their own, as many else do here, who in their parts set shining looks upon their cloudy hearts. And let us mix us with this company that here appears with mirth and jollity.
Yes, and we have the song of the fifth chorus.
Whoever saw so fair a sight, love and virtue met aright, and that the wonder constancy, like a comet to the eye, seldom ever seemed so bright. Sound out aloud so rare a thing, that all the hills and valleys may ring. Look, lovers, look with passion, see, if that any such there be, as there cannot be such who do feel that noble touch. In this glorious company, sound out aloud.
So rare a thing, etc., etc., etc. Once again, the school guidance counsellor Lydia gets to step in and deliver a cunning way of saving face. Last time we were talking about this play very much as high school setting that seemed to work for it. Less so of that this session. But I do like just the way that Phillis and Cloris are just going, well, we didn't get what we wanted. We had a terrible time. And it does feel like at the end we get a sort of panto walk down as all the wedding party come on and everyone's happy and isn't it jolly and it's nice. I like this as a sort of nice comic undercutting of going too soppy and romantic. I thought that actually worked really well. I was a bit worried about this scene going, where's this going?
Yeah, it's, like any panto, you have to have the baddie going, curses, foiled again. The only thing missing is we opened this play, those of us who were here last session, we opened this play with a pageant of three gods. More than three gods. We had Hymen, we had jealousy, we had envy, I forget who else
Avarice.
we had. Avarice, yes. A trio of vices, a bit like the Andrews sisters. It would be nice to have them back and have Hymen go like, see, you guys, see, I won, neener. But perhaps they're all dancing in the final dance along with, probably that triumphant re-entrance of Thyrsis and Sylvia. There's no stage direction here, but it seems indicated with, let us mix us with this company that here appears. And then the chorus says, whoever saw so fair a sight, love and virtue met aright. So that does seem to indicate we're closing on a wedding tableau as the orchestra swells and the words "the end" appear in cursive. And
I mean, it's that thing of, it does feel like there is something spectacular happening during these choruses, that almost one of the reasons why the acting stage space might be quite small is, in fact, there's a massive show that happens behind the curtain, which is taking up all the stage space for the chorus numbers. And actually, it's the poor actors are just huddled on 4.5 feet of acting space. And then behind them, this massive production number, which we don't have, is going on. And that there is no different knowledge to any of that. I'm just throwing it in, but I just like that as an idea, that there's an Indigo Jones thing happening behind that's enormous and is completely unreferenced in the text. Tom?
No, I agree with you that this last scene just shows the skill of the writer. It reminded me of Miles Davis once said to Herbie Hancock, don't play all the butter notes. And the ability to turn it at the very end like that, I think, otherwise you would have had, these hand in hand and all happy ending, and it would have just diluted the whole previous scenes. So this twist at the end I thought was jazzy and upbeat and a fabulous way to finish it.
Yeah, it was a
Rather than-
wonderfully unexpected ending. That I love it. The bitter and twisted girlfriends and they're coming back almost. And you can almost see the sequel. Cloris gets a revenge. Sorry.
Yeah, I do feel we need more Cloris.
Oh my gosh. Hymen's Triumph 2! Jealousy strikes back.
The Revenge of Cloris.
Phillis, I am your mother!
I mean, it's a text I'm sort of looking at, just thinking about the shape of it and what one might do with it, because it's something that could contract into a much simpler show than was originally intended, and I think there's something quite nice in that. You have to maybe tweak some of the dramaturgy, because obviously you've got gaps between some of the acts where big production numbers happen, which slightly destabilise bits. So there's the bit between Act 3 and Act 4 when you've basically got Thyrsis exits and comes straight back on again, because you need to have dancing shepherds. But there's huge potential in this, actually, and I see that it can go either way. It could go very simple and just play into this beautiful words, beautiful storytelling, real emotion, and then it also could go completely in the other direction of where it was originally, which is something that's got a bit of scale to it and is part of this massive royal occasion, the king and queen sitting in front of you, that had a budget. I don't know how much the budget for the show was, but the event itself, the many thousands of pounds. And in today's money, that's a lot of cash. But yeah. So that ending structurally could have been very disappointing, but actually I kind of enjoyed it. Liza.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense so many of the chorus's texts are given, but if there's anything happening during those interludes, apart from the rural marriage, there's very little signposted. And I wonder if this isn't a case of the same sort of pageant envy we've been seeing with the Lord Mayor's pageants, where Heywood or whomever is publishing, or Middleton or whomever is publishing the script is like, well, there was a pageant here, but it wasn't my idea, and I think it's a bit crap, so I'm not going to say anything about it. I wonder if the pageants were someone else's direction and the writer just didn't feel like including them in the publication text, which is a pity. I would have liked more stage directions, but it also does leave space to imagine, which I think is nice. And it's nice to have the text of the choruses. I think the choruses may well have just been choirs of choir boys, maybe dressed as nymphs, because we've had a lot of references to nymphs, but only a few speaking nymphs. So maybe the choir boys were singing nymphs.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So there was apparently a first-hand report of the performance. Not a lot, I think, of detail. The only note I've got here is that there were 2 interludes within it called Most Graceful Masks, which probably fits these chorus scenes quite well. So the one of the marriage ceremony that you see within the play with the shepherds, and the one is probably maybe the foresters at the end of Act 2 or wherever they were in Act 2 or something like that.
I feel in my soul that one of them involves Lamia and dancing witches.
Yeah. Just she's not in the play. Move on.
Never. I will never move on.
Oh dear, Liza feels the same way about Lamia as Thyrsis does about Sylvia.
Yeah, but at least he'd met Sylvia. We haven't met Lamia. We've just had a description. That's all we've got. Yeah. So yeah. Good stuff. Let's go into final thoughts. It's gone very high up on my list of plays to play with. It's calling out to be a Valentine's Day special, or bits of it definitely are. There's huge chunks of fabulous speeches in this that I'm just noting down, just going, yeah, I want a bit more of this action. This is good usable stuff. Are you looking for an audition speech about love, people? This is where to go. You want some storytelling speeches that, tell a condensed story. There's some really nice material in there that you could use. And just to do the show. I mean, I work on the podcast. Very happy to start developing it for the podcast. But very happy to put it on stage. Okay, I might dramaturgically tweak the structure of it and maybe make some cuts. But again, it moves so fast. I don't think it's very long, actually, done at pace. I mean, there's some bits you'd slow down, but there's some bits that, and some of the comedy stuff that was more in the last session. Is really funny. There's Cloris is it's a shame there isn't more Cloris action in the second half. I think everyone that's going to be the criticism of the show, is that it wasn't enough Cloris in the second half. Where did Cloris go? What happened to Cloris?
Always leave them wanting more.
Yeah. But otherwise, yeah. Final thoughts, Tom. Anything to add?
Only, again, I mean, you can tell by the energy in the room. Everybody's happy, everybody's up, everybody's tails are wagging, and everybody's thinking how you could stage this with shadow plays and all sorts of things. And you can tell by the energy that it's really good piece of writing.
Lynsey, you've only come in for this session, so you've got what you got. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what you and Tom have both said, which is that it just seems really, really worth our attention to see what else we might want to do with it. I really, really enjoyed it, even though I've only been in this sort of second session bit of it. So I be excited to see what happens in the first part and to see what might be possible.
I like possibilities. Liza, any final thoughts?
Yes, I like possibilities too, and this play feels full of them. I have to say it was immense fun to read, but then a lot of things are immense fun to read and less fun to watch. But I think this play might pass that test. I think, I was certainly having as much fun listening to everyone else's rendition as I was in my own scenes, especially that Palaemon speech where you guys, you will not believe what just happened. Oh my God! Which, again, there's so much related action, and it really is the mark of a good writer that the related action still feels like action. It doesn't feel like some dude standing there telling a story.
Yeah, well, I mean, as storytelling, which is very much my bag, it has clarity. It's not going off on a tangent where you can get lost. They're using names efficiently, so you know who they're talking about and who people are. It's really well structured storytelling, and that's why the stories work. And that's almost a framing for it, is to actually say, look, this is storytelling. This is what you're coming to see. And do it well, and that's again why I think it chimes with me so much. Greg, any final thoughts?
Oh yes, Cloris needs a whole play to herself. It's a mark of a good text when you look at it before you're due to read it. You think, yeah. Can't see it working, but actually come out of it and go, oh my God, some of the really interesting scenes. Loving it. Definitely what I'd love to see go further.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be said. Well, this is, in a sense, this is a mostly sad moment, of course, because actually, we apart from a couple of masks, I think this is it for Samuel Daniel. We've done first passes at all of his plays. We have a variation text on Cleopatra to go over. There's a slightly different version of that play which we've done before. And that's a play we wanted to go back to. And yeah, pretty much all the plays on some level we've gone, there's some good stuff here. I think there's been a bit of an ebb and flow as to how they've precisely landed. But yeah, I'm going to be a bit sad to not discover any more Samuel Daniel. So there is a mask session to come. I'm just trying to sort out the odds and ends on that one because there are different variations on the text that survive. But yeah, so I think Hymen has been triumphant. I think we can safely say it's a very triumphant Hymen. And we will sign off on that note. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much. And goodbye. The Mole of Sylvia, too.